part of what you were asking. Okay. Yep.
So you said that you're looking for people to make donations to the Hacker Foundation. I was wondering if at cons such as this one or at DEF CON, do you run any smaller scale donations or fundraising events for the Hacker Foundation? And if so, what sort of fundraising events do you do?
Next question, please.
Yeah, it's a little bit in the same. I'm interested in how you come to donators, how you contact them, and what's the approach. You go with a special project, for example. Somebody wants money for this project, and you go with this project to the possible donator to collect money, or how you get to the donators, and what's your success approach for this?
The success varies on the project, and usually projects that come to us have a donor in mind. That usually they already have somebody who they thought might be in line. With what happened with the North Boys and Girls Club in Chicago is they had a need. They had former corporate sponsorship, and what we try to do is not so much sort of the more formal contact of writing letters or contacting people, but using existing social networks within the board of directors and within Chicago 2600, and having people who knew people who are willing to do things on a much more personal level. That most of our contacts that way are just knowing other people in the scene who might have access to something or might have something sitting in a closet somewhere that they just need to get rid of that would be of use to that. And I think we've had varied success on that depending on the project. I mean, the Metasploit project in comparison is just an open pitch. It's a donation button only. You get a letter from us saying, you know, you donated $100, you can write this off on your U.S. tax obligation. Okay. Yes. And then.
Wouldn't you agree that the electronic voting issue could be a major project which would be across political borders?
Yes. And that's something that I think is, I personally believe it's very well covered in the U.S., and I think that anything that Hacker Foundation would get involved in, just the risk of putting our charitable status at stake with that, because it's so closely connected to pending legislation and pending problems in the United States, that there's a recent law passed called the Help America Vote Act that, depending on how you see it, might have hurt things even more than that. It could be a good project, but I think that there are a lot of people who are very talented in the community in the United States who are working on it. I don't think there are enough, but because it's a political issue that's so close to the no-go zone for the Hacker Foundation that, you know, we've unofficially made a conscious decision to sort of stray away from that because it is so politically charged and that it puts our 501c3 status at risk. Another thing I haven't sort of gotten into is that a lot of charities that engage in political activism sort of outside of their license, so to speak, from the United States government, have been called on it and have had their charitable status close to being revoked. And that I don't think I have to explain that the current administration tends to not play so nice or by the long-established rules. And so that just sort of to protect what our stated aim was, we tend to shy away from things like that. And I do think that blackboxvoting.org and other groups are working very well on that, and that there is coverage there, and that they're doing it. You had to follow up?
Those charities which lost their status, were there already court decisions about that?
Whether or not a charity has status doesn't technically follow, and again, I'm not a lawyer, it's not law that, it's law that starts administratively within the IRS, that an administrator at the IRS can say, you've done this bad thing, we're taking away your status. And they can just do that. And they have to go to court, and it's a very expensive and very long process, and they have to sue the IRS to get their status back, and that there are many, many different layers that make it hard to do. It's a process that's well outside of the standard tort system in the United States. And I think I've been, yeah. Okay.
first, let's try to decode the signal that is sent to see whether
okay.
interesting data.
Okay.
So you described that you have this funding for Metasploit, which is basically, if I understand it right, it's basically a development project, right? It's mostly about software, or is it more about operating servers? I don't know. So I wonder, probably not how much money goes to that project, but what is this money being spent on actually within the project? And are there any guidelines you have or have established or that simply exist as a de facto rule what the projects could spend their money on?
And this was part of the negotiation process of setting things up, and when they came to us and applied for us, we said that if you have equipment donations, I mean, they have to decide to accept them, but equipment donations are basically used to further development of Metasploit, for them to give to developers to work with. Their cash monies can also be used to buy equipment and facilitate networking on the project. That if they raise enough money, they can all get together and have sort of a 2 or 3 day hackfest on that. That's basically all they can spend money on.
So it's
in
like
the way we've negotiated it with them.
Okay, so it's basically equipment and doing like travel expenses and then conferences and that kind of stuff. Is there anything more you can envision that might be like, I don't know, I've been thinking about getting, well, some projects need some kind of, well, every project needs some kind of sustainability, but many projects depend on a certain lead developer that really loves to put more energy into it and really be the center for everybody else to contribute, but maybe this lead developer has no way of like getting enough money for his living. So what about supporting a lead developer and get him into some kind of, him or her, to some kind of employment using these funds? Is this something you would support?
Yes, and granted, that's a big legal issue that they haven't asked us to tackle yet. But I could easily see funds like that for a project subsidizing the lead workers, so that, or the project lead, so that they didn't have to spend so much time at work. And that happens, and that has to happen because of certain laws regarding charities and things like that, and spending limits and the technical details. How it's done has to be done very carefully, and that when we approach that if that's a need, they haven't asked for it yet. If there's a project that comes to us that has the financial wherewithal to do that, I would strongly support that, and I believe there is a way to do it. I know other 501c3s do that, but right now the Hacker Foundation doesn't have any employees, and that's a very sticky term in the United States tax law, just like it is here, I'm sure, in the European Union.
I wasn't really talking about employee status as such, but getting regular money, at least something to make people, to encourage lead developers to spend more time on the project, which would be.
And it's one of those things where I could easily see, and I think what we have worked out is for the internet bill for the lead developer could be paid for out of Metasploit funds. A portion of his house that he uses for development, if he pays a rent or pays a mortgage, could easily be used for that. And that they would basically send those bills to us and we would pay them. That there are a lot of, the rules in, like I said, writing checks out to people individually are very sticky in the United States, but something like that I think falls in line with one of the core reasons of what I wanted to do in the United States.
I'm just wondering, I'm trying to figure out in terms of your organization whether you're more within a vacuum in terms of disconnected, or whether you're more engaged within community in the sense that software technology law and such, and the law and various other things are becoming far more integrated. It's no longer this sort of lawless space of frontier land. And so my question is, in terms of the US situation right now, there's been some major developments, as I understand it, this summer, for instance, in terms of Washington and EFF and EPIC. And I'm just wondering, does your organization follow that closely?
We do, and I don't want to say that we follow it as organization stated policy, but all of our board of directors, I mean, Jake Applebaum, as a director, has been very involved in a lot of those kinds of issues, and Jennifer Granick's been involved in a lot of those issues, and personally, as individuals in the community, we're very connected with those things. And like I said, because of the political considerations in the tax law, the foundation as a foundation tends to shy away from things that are directly political like that, but we all follow it. You know, we all read the news and we all stay involved in that because we're involved in the community and it's things that are important to us.
Well, earlier, as I heard it, you said that you were deferring to the EFF to take up the legal challenges and you were trying to focus more on the technical things?
More on the technical things and more on community and charity and the groundwork.
And
Sort of thing.
I'm just trying to understand if there was a situation, say, where, you know, there was a major issue where the EFF had problems, or EPIC or various other organizations that were looking at that legal issues, would you be potentially one of the organizations waiting in the wings?
Yes, if they ask for that, we will gladly do that. That if they have, just this an example just came to me as you were talking, but if they came and asked us and they said, you know, like, we're really good at reaching people in San Francisco. We're really good at reaching people in New York. People in Grand Rapids don't have a clue. Could you fix that? We can, as a part of education, set up forums to help educate people who aren't in the major urban centers or who may not have as strong a political connection to those things, to just educate them on the issues in an apolitical way, to basically give them the tools enough to find out more and to find out how those issues connect with them directly.
Can I make a suggestion then?
Please.
Okay, so right now, censorship, privacy, various other intrusions, retention law, all of those things right now are sort of centering around sort of issues like terrorism and child pornography. Those are the key terms. On the other end of the spectrum, though, there's the women and children issue. That's the counterbalance. And there's organizations that are struggling in the States who are trying to protect women and children, women who are being stalked by people, domestic violence, and then children whose personal information can potentially be sold. And so, to my mind, that's a tremendous counterbalance for the situation in the States. And I know that they need help. And they're a tiny, tiny organization, but just something to think about.
Okay. No, thank you very much for that.
Hi.
Hey, Jen.
How much time do we have left?
5 minutes, according to that guy right there.
Okay, sweet. So I just want to clarify the Hacker Foundation's role within the community. I think that there's been some mistake of comparing it with an organization like CCC, and I think that it's a different organization than that. That's my question, basically. Would it be fair to say that it's sort of a meta project handler, that when you have a project, like an organization like the CCC, I want to have conferences or I want to do this, they could come to the Hacker Foundation for support, right? Let me clarify. Let me make an example here. I think when I first moved to Berlin a couple weeks ago, basically, everyone here warned me that the bureaucracy would be terrible, that you had this rumor of German bureaucracy. And from my experience, American bureaucracy trumps it absolutely, completely. And when you sit down and you have a project, I want to do something, a lot of times the first question is, well, okay, I'm going to need to set up a nonprofit organization, or what do I need to do? And I think a lot of projects just stop there, you know, and they can't continue because writing a grant is like a 3-year process. Because setting up a nonprofit organization is at least 6 months, right? Because a friend of mine tried to get a radio station license. That application took 2 years, right? So an organization that helps you handle the taxes and the legal business lets you do your own political things, lets you do your own hacker things. And so it's like a... Boy, I'm really bad at this today.
You actually slept. I didn't.
Would it be fair to say that it's a project handler
Yes.
of sorts? And so... Right.
No, it is, but again, and a point I don't think I emphasized clearly enough is that we are what the community wants us to be within, of course, the certain guidelines that I've talked about. I established this because people in the community asked us to. I said, okay, we're here. People, and that's the thing, what happens is people come to us with a good idea and we get things ready and rolling, and then the ball becomes too heavy and drops.
Right.